good morning and welcome to Health Talk here on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXBX. It's Paul Thomas and Bill Kearney from Northlake Medical Pharmacies back in the studio. And Bill, fair weekend. I saw you from afar out there, and overall I thought it was a very good fair. How was your experience this year?
I thought, with the exception of the exhibits in the buildings, it didn't seem like there was near as many of those. And I was working that big building for the Lions Club to keep people from taking food inside. And we got many comments about there just wasn't much in there.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
They would ask about where the art was, and we told them where that was, and they came out of that building not thinking that there was a good amount. So it was fun. We went to the board of directors dinner on Thursday night. And because Dana had just had a new knee put in, we just walked down towards the Rotary booth and back. And, of course, with my wife, who knows everybody.
You had to stop every 5 minutes.
That takes about.
Yep.
And I thought I was going to make it to the auction, and I didn't. But I bought a on the silent auction at the board of directors dinner. I bought a bottle of steel wine and a three-course dinner at the sauce shop.
Oh, where are we going?
I mean, everybody says, you won, and I said I didn't win.
Now, is that money there for the silent auction go to the fair?
As far as I know, it does. Yeah, it's they were all donations, and it was. I had probably 50 4-H and FFA kids come into my pharmacy before the fair, and of course I couldn't do them all justice. And then my family came down from Rockland on Friday night, and so I didn't get to go to the auction. So, but I have every year bought goats and pigs and chickens and turkeys and I understand that, I haven't seen anything in the paper about it, but I understand that it was really hard to get some bidding to go as they got later on in the auction, because people, I donated to 4 different fires and since the last fair.
Oh, it's just tough everywhere right now.
And I was, excuse me, I was a kid that raised livestock and went to the fair, had the reserve grand champion Angus when I was a kid, and showed pigs and dairy cattle and everything. And I know how important it is when you go to the effort. And these kids, when they come in, they are very well informed on what they fed their cattle and what they fed their pigs and what they weigh and what to expect. And
absolutely.
And
they're just the nicest of kids too.
Oh, I know. They're
very polite.
Very polite. And they, used to be, when I was in the fair, you had one animal. You might have been showing a pig and a cow and a chicken or something, but you didn't have multiple.
Yeah.
These kids have multiple pigs and multiple goats, and it's hard when there are that many kids involved to be the bidder on every single thing. So I would have bought something had I been there, and I would have just turned it back into the market, because I have a freezer full from
years past.
Years past. But I thought it was a good fair. It was. You always see lots of people that you've never seen all year, and one of the people from this radio station, Greg Allen.
He had a booth.
He had a booth, and we were looking to buy nothing, of course, and we walked by there, and Greg said, and he had some urns. Oh. And if you bought them from the mortuary, they were $1,000. If you bought them from him, they were $60 or $65. We didn't plan on putting our ashes in there.
I was going to say, is this some pre-planning you got going on? Or
we were planning on making.
Morbid.
He had a recipe there to make sauerkraut. So
sauerkraut and urns, what a combo!
So I thought, well, it's worth the $60 investment to make good sauerkraut. So he had a recipe that he threw in the urn with him, and he said he couldn't keep up with the orders. They were really significant, and it takes some time to make those things. So.
Yeah,
and he said it had been a real successful year. So I couldn't remember what his what is, he had two names. One was Greg
Allen.
Greg Allen, and then he had another name.
I don't know.
That was a real name.
Oh, I've always known him as Greg Allen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the only one I could remember. So I just called him Greg. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I had friends come in this weekend as well, and they were from the Bay Area, and we were happy to bring them down to the fair, and they got to see our little town fair compared to the big fairs of the Bay Area. I think they had gone to the Sonoma County Fair at one point this summer, and so that's a huge fair.
Yeah.
And but we went Saturday night, and that was probably a mistake. Well, it was a mistake because the kids wanted to ride rides, and the lines for the rides on Saturday night and just the crowd was just,
huge.
It was too much. It was too much, and the kids were getting stressed out. The parents were getting stressed out, and people are running into you and knocking things, knocking beers over on you, and it's nobody's fault. Nobody's doing it intentionally.
No, that's always the big night.
It's just the sheer amount of people that fit into a small space like that. Just trying to walk from the entrance, or the what do they call that? The little gazebo there. Mm-hmm. To where the rides are, down where the grandstand is, it takes 20, well, maybe not 20 minutes, but it takes like 10 minutes just to get through that sea of people.
And they're all lined up at the food stand.
And everybody's lined up and you're cutting through their lines, and you're feeling bad about that. And so that wasn't the most enjoyable night. Thursday night was a lot better. We were down there Thursday night, just Celia, me, and Matthew. And Matthew got
that was perfect.
Yeah, that was the perfect crowd. And that was the night I saw more of the local Lakeport people. I think Thursday night might be like Lakeport night.
Right.
Because it seemed like Saturday night I didn't really recognize anybody. And maybe I think we ran into one or two people, but a couple of them were working in their booths,
Sure.
But Thursday night it was like you were handshaking every 5 minutes. Hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? And that was the night I seen you across the crowd, and we were on our way out. And otherwise I would have came up and harassed you as well. But
I was carrying this big bottle of steel wine, and I told Dana, I says, you can't visit with everybody from here to the Rotary booth because this is heavy, So I had to leave the urn there until the next night, which I worked for the Lions Club, and picked it up, and then I bought a bag of kettle corn and took home to her.
There you
because
go.
She loved kettle corn.
And that smells so good.
Oh, but we're here to talk about your health, and the food you saw at the fair with the giant corn dogs that were $7 or $8. I don't remember, but they were big as this red Solo cup I have in front of me, and you wanted one of everything. I saw the turkey legs, and I saw all the stuff, and but I stayed away from those things. And
I did have a corn dog.
Did you?
I did. Yeah, I split it with my wife.
A big one?
No, small one.
No,
small one. That was enough.
And I think they were poultry. I don't think they were beef. I think.
Oh, were they? They were chicken corn dogs, but tasted good.
So that's better for you anyway.
Yeah.
But excuse me, I did develop a little kind of a drainage thing, so I'm going through this. Hope this guy doesn't call that told me not to be on the radio as long as I was having this. That's been a couple of years ago, but. We're going to talk about a lot of vital medical effects that everybody should know about drugs and about dentistry, and what you should know about medications. And we're going to really start about something that is very close to me, and that is sepsis. And sepsis is an infection in the bloodstream that can be activated rather rapidly, and it can eventually shut down your organs, and you can die from it. And there is a lot of people that die of sepsis, and most people don't know they have it until it progresses so quickly. And the reason that I'm concerned about it, or that I'm reporting about it, was we didn't know when we were in Moorea a few years ago, and my wife had surgery for varicose veins, and she had an open area from the wound, and we were on our next to the last day in Tahiti, and she got scratched by some coral, and the coral had gotten into her bloodstream, and by the day we were leaving, she wasn't feeling well at all. and ended up with severe diarrhea and wanted to vomit, and we didn't really know what it was. We thought maybe it was a food infection or food poisoning. And I actually had to take her from Papeete to the airport in a wheelchair, and she couldn't even walk up the stairway because she was too weak. And if they'd have known, if Tahiti Nui Airlines had known how weak she was and how sick she was, she probably wouldn't have been allowed to go on the flight. But she was, and then we got into Los Angeles and had to take her by wheelchair to Southwest Airlines to get home. And by noon the next day, we were talking to her and she couldn't seem to hear. And we kept yelling at her and trying to get her to, and we didn't know she was that sick. And we looked in her earlobes, and there was pus coming out of her earlobes. Wow. And her whole ear was full of pus. And when we got home, I got her laid down and looked at her leg, which was where the infection occurred, and it was swollen considerably. We called our physician, and he said, meet me at the hospital right away. So we did, and got into the emergency room, and a friend of ours at the time, who was a cardiologist, was making rounds, and he saw us, and he came over to the emergency room, and right away they were sure that she had either MRSA or sepsis, and got her in, and her temperature had gone up to like 105. They checked her blood pressure, and it was going up higher. They started her, we saw a hospitalist, and he was starting just oral antibiotics, and they suggested our friend that was a cardiologist, and then the person that was taking over as a hospitalist was a partner of our physician, and she started IV antibiotics on her, and she almost passed away that evening. She was so filled with infection that they couldn't get on top of it. Her white count was astronomical, and she was clearly a victim of sepsis, which is often a deadly reaction, and that can go fast through your body and shutting down their vital organs. While it's not known, it's actually more common than heart attacks and just as deadly. So more than a million people in the United States develop sepsis every year, and more than 250,000, which is 25% of those people, have deaths that are linked to it. So according to the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, that's higher than the earlier estimates, and the increase the CDC attributes mainly to better reporting on the infection, as well as a growing number of older people who are especially susceptible to sepsis. So many of those things are linked to infections contracted in hospitals and doctors' offices and nursing homes, but nearly half of them are community acquired, which means from infections that people contract in their homes, schools, playgrounds, or like on vacation as we were. And excuse me, any kind of thing can lead to sepsis, even a manicure gone wrong, or food poisoning, or urinary tract infection. And one reason it's so dangerous is that people don't, and physicians even, don't recognize the problem until it's too late. And we were very fortunate to be back in Lake County, because when we were on the airplane coming back from Tahiti, we had to hold Dana up to get her down to the bathroom, and it was about every hour, and that's a long flight. That's 10 or 12 hours. And by the time we got into Sacramento, it was late morning, and then early evening when we got back to the hospital. So rapid early treatment of that disease can save lives, and I'm telling you, I went home at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I wasn't sure that I was going to still have my wife. It often starts with a local infection, and most often in the lungs, or the digestive tract, or the urinary tract, or in her case, it was a bacterial infection that triggers sepsis too. So whenever you get an infection like this, your immune system kicks in producing chemicals to fight the infections, but sometimes either because the bacteria is unusually powerful or because the immune system is already weakened by other health problems. And my wife has a circulatory problem with a tendency to develop clots, and so when those chemicals are set loose in the bloodstream and go completely through the body, instead of just fighting the local infections, those chemicals that are unleashed by the immune system cause widespread inflammation and damaged tissues in the liver and the kidneys and the heart. And with hours, those blood clots can begin to form. They damage the blood vessels. I'm telling you, I've never seen anything move so rapidly. And thank goodness that our local physicians were well informed and diagnosed it off the bat. They still weren't sure. They put her in isolation. They still weren't sure if it was just pure sepsis or if it could have been MRSA or another kind of disease, since we'd been over in the South Pacific. So the new CDC reports, the Center for Disease Control, helps identify who are at the most risk. That includes people with chronic diseases, which 7 out of 10 people in the study who developed sepsis had diabetes, lung, kidney, liver disease, or some other chronic condition. With conditions with a weakened immune system like HIV, AIDS, or cancer, who are 65 years old or younger than a year old, probably because they're too prone to infection, who have been recently in a hospital, nursing home, or other health care facility, because infection-causing bacteria are often common in those institutions. We don't always know how to prevent sepsis, but it's often not recognized until it's progressed so fast. So one thing the CDC found, that most sepsis patients have underlying problems that require them to have frequent contact with doctors. And those visits, of course, put you in a great opportunity to get infections. And healthcare providers at that time really can, these infections that turn septic can happen quite quickly. And if you go to a healthcare provider or a physician, especially if you're diabetic, and you see their feet wounds that haven't healed, that's no different than what Dana was experiencing with a surgery that hadn't healed. How do you prevent it? If you're old enough to get vaccinated, 35% of those cases stem from pneumonia. We have 2 forms of pneumonia vaccine now: Pneumovax 23 and Prevnar 13. You need to get one, the Prevnar 13, right away if you're over 60, and Medicare usually pays for it, and then a year later get the 23. Only 20% of the high-risk adults are under the age of 65, and 60% of those are 65 and older. So we just had somebody come in, I think I mentioned this last week, to get a pneumonia shot, and they were only 59, and the insurance wouldn't pay for it because they were. It wasn't pneumonia; it was Zostavax, shingles. An annual flu shot. We should be getting those within another week. Can prevent those respiratory infections that can sometimes turn septic. And we're going to talk about that children's missed vaccine again. We talked about it last week, and more information today. But only a third of those serious sepsis patients in the CDC study that were over 60 had a record of being vaccinated against the flu. 1,000 more deaths could be prevented with better coverage. Urinary infections is another way. A quarter of the sepsis cases resulted from UTIs. So it's important to see a health provider if you have warning signs of those infections. And what's working against us right now, is the fact that we're trying to use less and less antibiotics for infections that we think your natural immune system can take over. And so when you have something urgent like that, it's important to see a healthcare provider. If those signs don't go away, usually it's a painful burning feeling when you urinate. and a strong urge to go to the bathroom. So when appropriate, treated with antibiotics. UTIs are also common among hospital patients, especially those who've had a catheter in. So it's extra important to watch for those infections while in the hospital. In a case like Dana, where she had a wound, about 1 in 10 cases follow the skin infection, so it's essential to care for wounds and scrapes properly. That means washing with soap and water, cleaning out the dirt and debris, and covering wounds. Many times in the islands, especially in the South Pacific and Moorea, places that aren't right on the map as far as healthcare, they will tell you to, when you get a coral, hit a coral reef and get coral into infection, to use lime juice. I'll tell you that will put you through the roof, Paul.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds a little painful.
One of the old methods was to urinate.
Yeah. And they say that for jellyfish stings.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Didn't work. So you want to wash them with soap and clean out the debris, and people with diabetes, or people, you don't have to have diabetes to not heal properly with blisters and wounds like that. If you have a circulatory system that isn't quite up to snuff, where there's possible blood clots and you have varicose veins and those kind of things, it's the same risk. When somebody has an antibiotic and they have diabetes or have a poor circulatory system, they usually take 20 days of an antibiotic instead of just 10, because in the lower extremities especially, the antibiotic doesn't circulate as well, and all of the antibiotic doesn't get down to that lower limb, and that's why a lot of the diabetics lose their legs when they get an infection, because it becomes gangrenous and they don't take care of themselves, and they wait too long to get the antibiotic. So that's just another way, and that's only 10% of the sepsis infections come from that area, but I'm telling you, it's just as life-threatening. Avoid infections in the hospital, because those many of them turn septic that originate in the hospital. It's essential that your healthcare providers take steps to avoid those infections. That means, for example, insisting that everyone who comes to your hospital room, including doctors and nurses, wash their hands every time they touch you. And if you do develop an infection, it's important to watch for the signs. If you expect it, you need to act fast. This includes fever plus chills, shortness of breath, rapid breathing, diarrhea, vomiting, disorientation or confusion, and act fast. If you have any of those symptoms, contact a healthcare provider. We could not even, in Papeete, could not even find acetaminophen to lower her fever. It was on a Sunday night. Everything was closed up, and we couldn't find anybody to get us treatment. If you have an infection that's really gotten worse, it's possible you could have sepsis. If it's after hours, either contact the providers on call service, or if you feel very sick, go to the emergency room. If not something you can sit on till morning, and we did that, you need to demand attention, and this becomes even more of a critical thing today than it was 5 years ago. They miss it because they fail to react quickly, because we don't want to disturb a physician or an emergency room, and you think this is going to cost me too much to go through the ER and there's really nothing wrong. You don't have a lot of time with sepsis, and it's far more common than it used to be. So when you say that it is just as dangerous as a heart attack, and it's at risk for it to develop quickly enough that more than 250,000 people just in the United States die from it every year, then it's something that you really can't ignore. Get your doctor, if he suspects sepsis, make sure you get treated with IV antibiotics. Dana had 3 antibiotics of antibacterials and antibiotics going into her system. And it's just a matter of being aware and you being more informed, as I tell people every day when I hear the horror stories about what's going on when they are taken care of by a medical layperson or a medical physician or any healthcare provider. Some of the loops that they have to go through in order to get you care is financially demanding and not necessarily on a timely basis, and your health is at risk. I'm telling you, I almost lost my wife, and I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't realize anything like that could happen so quickly. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about pediatricians giving thumbs down to flu vaccine, and that's just the opposite of what I reported last Wednesday when we were on the air, because they came out and said that they were going to have it this year because they'd found out it was effective, and it's not. Have you recently been discharged from the hospital or special care facility and you need help in getting around your house? Hi, my name is Bill Kearney, owner of Northlake Medical Pharmacies in Lakeport. My wife, Dana, and I own Northlake Medical Pharmacies in Lakeport. And for the last 6 years, we've been offering a new service in Lake County. Both our pharmacies now sell and rent hospital and medical supplies. So if you need a walker, a rollator, a wheelchair, or a transport chair, we'll rent them to you or sell them to you if you prefer. We also have lift chairs and hand, wrist, knee, leg, and back braces for your comfort if you need them. If you're looking for a pharmacy that has great service, a $4.99-month generic prescription plan, free delivery service to Lakeport, Upper Lake, Nice, Lucerne, and now Kelseyville, as well as rental sales and medical supplies, then you need to come to Northlake Medical Pharmacies on Hill Road across from Sutter Lakeside Hospital and in front of the Bruno's Shop Smart on Lakeport Boulevard.
We're asking folks about marriage.
Marriage makes me think of sports. You know, teamwork, dedication.
Okay, let's see what people say.
Let's say your marriage is a sport. What sport would it be?
Oh, what sport?
Basketball.
Surfing. Because we've been riding the wave for so long.
It have to be a team sport.
Ice hockey.
Baseball. It lasts a long time and not a lot happens.
Ping pong.
So why ping pong?
Always on our toes, but relaxed and fun.
Maybe doubles tennis.
So there's a lot of back and forth.
A lot of people watching.
So how many people are influenced by your marriage?
Hundreds?
Yeah.
I think we could easily fill a football stadium with all the people that we've influenced. And you really think about the ripple effect.
One influences the next and the next and the next. It's like a wave.
So it looks like a good marriage touches a lot of people.
Exactly. A good marriage goes a long way.
Want to improve your marriage? For ideas, go to foryourmarriage.org. A message from the Catholic Church.
Attention savers, this important message will change how you save. The Treasury Department is eliminating paper savings bonds from the payroll savings program and going green with Treasury Direct. Treasury Direct is a convenient, secure online savings program that makes it simple for you to purchase electronic savings bonds directly from your paycheck, checking, or savings account. So go online and change how you save today. Visit treasurydirect.gov to open your free account.
A public service message from the Department of the Treasury.
You're a 19-year-old kid critically wounded in the Central Highlands of Vietnam. Your unit is outnumbered 8-1, and the enemy fire is so intense that your CO has ordered the medevac helicopters to stop coming in. Your family is halfway around the world, and you're thinking that you'll never see them again. Then you hear the sound of a helicopter. Captain Ed Freeman is coming for you. He's not medevac, but he heard the radio call and decided to fly down into the machine gun fire anyway. Then he flies you up and out to safety, and he keeps coming back 13 more times until all the wounded are out. No one knew until the mission was over that the captain himself had been hit 4 times. Medal of Honor recipient Captain Ed Freeman died in Boise, Idaho. We're losing about 285 Vietnam veterans every day. But the Education Center at the Wall will preserve stories like these so future generations will understand and never forget. Call 1-866-990-WALL or go to buildthecenter.org and help us build it.
All right, we're back.
All right, we're back. We've been reliving the fair again. So
there's so much to talk about.
Yeah, right. We were, just before break, we talked about the pediatricians giving a final thumbs down yesterday to the only needle-free flu vaccine on the market, saying they do not recommend the flu vaccine for kids this year. If you remember, last year it was only like 2% effective, and they thought they had changed it, and last week reported that it was back on the market again. It's really a symbolic rejection, because vaccine advisors to CDC had already recommended against it for the season, saying it had barely protected against influenza for the past few years. And distribution companies are not even offering it to pharmacies or clinics, and I reminded people last week that we were not going to be carrying it. But it's a real blow to parents whose kids hate needles, which is to say parents of most children. And I'll never forget giving Matthew his first shot in his leg, and he hated me for years afterwards.
He gave you the look.
So instead of kids are going to have to get flu shots. New research shows that the flu shot provided significantly a lot better protection than in recent seasons compared with a nasal vaccine. Families, of course, want their children and themselves to be protected against the influenza, and not having the opinion of or option of receiving it intranasally anymore, or a vial nasal spray. It's disappointing to some people to think that vaccination is the best preventative measure, and we have to protect everybody against influenza, and especially children and older people. So given the bad news, I'm sure the kids are relatively disappointed, and obviously it's less traumatic to receive spray in the nose than a big ugly needle in the arm. But it's less traumatic to receive a spray in the nose than a needle anyplace. So the advisory committee declined to recommend it last June, citing that it showed only the reduced risk of getting influenza by 3%. AstraZeneca, who's the big Hondo company which makes all the money, which makes Flu Mist, disputed those findings and said European studies have shown it was effective. And a Canadian study published a few weeks later showed it appeared equally effective in kids. And the takeaway on this is our standards are much more stringent than they are in Canada, or they are in other parts of the country, such as Europe. Their recommendations usually command vaccine availability in the U.S., and the clinics have already canceled most of their orders. So I'm not saying that you can't get it, but you won't be getting it from most of your local pharmacies or probably your physicians. You know, it's a little different from other vaccines because not only is it spritzed up the nose, but it uses a live virus. And that's one of the reasons that we mentioned last year that you could get the flu from getting the nasal inhalation. They're not sure whether that was a factor. In previous years, it's been shown to cause a stronger immune system response than flu shots in the past. For that reason, some kids, such as those with asthma, usually cannot be administered Flu Mist anyway. So they're reformulated and remade every year. That's why we miss it sometimes, because we reformulate it every year about a year ahead of time. We need to recognize that the flu virus is totally unpredictable. There are multiple influenza virus strains, and we don't know which ones are going to predominate from one season to the next. So we don't know which ones are going to be more common in certain communities. We've had them develop and mutate from between when they started on the East Coast to the time they got to the West Coast. There was a mutation already. One strain may cause epidemics in the United States, while a different strain makes most people sick in Europe. Just for an example, and often later in the year, another strain may move through communities that have already been through their annual flu epidemics. And I think that happened last year because we had a lot of people getting flu afterwards. Flu vaccines include a cocktail of 3 influenza viruses. You can also get a quadrivalent. In recent years, companies have been offering them against 4 different strains. But they haven't been found that they were any more clinically effective. That means once they got them into your system, that you were any better protected than you were with the trivalent vaccine. They also repeated advice that pregnant women get flu shots because they protect both the mother and the baby. It's also supported the idea of mandatory flu vaccines for all health workers. So we give every employee a flu shot. If they don't take a flu shot, they have to sign a release saying that if they get the flu or expose it to others, that it's a risk that they're going to have to take. That the flu vaccine was offered to them, and if they didn't want to take it, they did not have to. They don't pay for it. I pay for it. I pay for all their major medical insurance. So there's 6 companies that make flu vaccines for the United States market. They include shots that protect against either 3 or 4 strains. And we were just told last week that we should have the vaccines by the 15th or the 18th. So you will know as soon as we get them. We already have clinics scheduled. You don't need an appointment. Just come in, and if you have Partnership Health, if you have Medicare, almost all insurances now do pay for flu shots. So there may be some that don't, but most of them will. We have 15 minutes left. We're going to talk a little bit about medications and things that we all should know as lay people that sometimes we don't think about. Number one is keep medications away from children. I see more and more medications now that look like candy. Yesterday, Paul, I have moles in my yard.
Moles, okay,
and,
yes.
And my gardener quit me a couple of months ago, and I went into the storage shed, and there was mole poison. When I opened them up, they looked like gummy worms. And I had all kinds of kids over to my house this weekend. They weren't colorful, but they were a flesh colored, and you open up the mole track and you put them in there. And the first thing I thought about was I've got to hide these things, because if kids
see them,
go in the garage and see them, they're going to think they're gummy worms and eat them, and they're poison.
Yeah. Wow.
And no medication is completely safe, even if it says it is on it. I've often said many times, aspirin would not be okayed today to be sold over the counter because it's such a strong anti-inflammatory and can cause gastric bleeding. It is, but it's over the counter. They don't have what they call children's aspirin anymore. They have adult aspirin that's the same strength, because kids can actually get a disease from taking it when they're under 18 years old. And even Tylenol, acetaminophen, when you ingest too much acetaminophen, it can cause you to stop breathing, and it's not easily reversible. So if you have a teenager that thinks they want to end their life, or anybody, and they take a bottle of Tylenol, unless you get them to an emergency room, they're not going to make it. So follow the instructions on every medication. It's really vital to get the correct results. Tylenol should never be given with alcohol. This could damage your liver, and never drink alcohol with any medication as a general rule. But I talk about many times at Thanksgiving about an individual that was not a drinker, and he was at Thanksgiving dinner, and he took a Tylenol and a glass of wine, and he woke up 3 days later in the hospital with the liver replacement.
Wow.
Because it killed his liver. First time he'd ever had a glass of wine, and had taken a Tylenol with it. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like aspirin, Aleve, Advil can cause ulcers in the gastrointestinal tract, so you don't want to eat those or take those on an empty stomach. Aspirin is going to make your blood thin if you ever go into a dentist or go into a physician and you're going to have some sort of surgical procedure, they will tell you stop taking all non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, meaning ibuprofen, naproxen, aspirin, 5 days before you have the surgery, because it affects the clotting of blood. Adhere to the antibiotic doses. When you get something that says take 3 times a day or 4 times a day until they're all gone, you take them until they're all gone. If you're taking it twice a day, now this is antibiotics only, twice a day, and you're supposed to be taking it 4 times a day, then make sure you double up and take it 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. It's better if you take it as they schedule it, so you get a higher blood level from the antibiotic. But if you just know you're not going to take it in the middle of the day or at dinner time, then take double. Take 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening. But never stop if you feel better. Finish the whole regimen. Now, antiviral things for when you get a virus or something like shingles, they are effective against viruses, where antibiotics aren't effective against viruses. So don't experiment with herbal products without consulting your doctor, because they may interact with the medication and have serious side effects. This is just to give you a general idea. If you have any personal questions, ask your doctor and provider, because these things are extremely dangerous. Medication is a double-edged sword. For every life that's been saved by drugs, there's an equal amount of people who have taken too much. And in reality, prescription drugs kill over 100,000 people every year. It's a serious problem in the United States, often taking 2 seemingly harmless medications. And I'm not sure if we talked about this last week or not. I don't think so, Paul, but there is a drug out now that's illegal, that is a cousin of fentanyl, and fentanyl is 100 times more potent than morphine. This drug starts with a C, carfentanil, and it's 1,000 times more potent than fentanyl. And people are selling it on the street. It's manufactured in Mexico. It's an elephant tranquilizer, very similar to what PCP was in the years back when I lived in San Jose 20 or 30 years ago. Everybody was taking this animal tranquilizer called phencyclidine, and it was an animal tranquilizer then. This is to put an elephant down. So drug misuse every place is rampant. Even medication over the counter to prevent pain come with instructions featuring which types of medications it shouldn't be taken with. St. John's wort, which we have used as years when we came out with things for over-the-counter products to treat regular diagnosed diseases, and one of those was depression. We used St. John's wort, and because it was a natural product, and people couldn't afford to go see a doctor, that it was a good medicine, and it is a good antidepressant. The problem is when you take it and go out in the sun, it's very photosensitive, meaning you can get burned right through from the sun's ultraviolet rays by taking St. John's wort if you don't put on sun-protected sunscreen. Also, it interacts with many drugs. Digitalis, digoxin is another one that people take for atrial fib and to get their heart back in rhythm. And that has a tendency to stay in the system. Digitalis, which is the drug that digoxin comes from, or lanoxin comes from, is called foxglove, and it's a very poisonous substance. So but it isn't in the strengths that we use to digitalize the heart. So when people take it and it doesn't get excreted out of the liver and kidneys, it becomes toxic and very dangerous to take St. John's wort and be taking lanoxin or digoxin at the same time. How often do you see your dentist, Paul?
Let's see. I saw him probably 6 months ago, maybe, but on a yearly basis, not routinely.
No.
Yeah, more like emergency type of a thing, which is I know is not good, but. Yeah,
you should see your dentist.
I should see my dentist. My Matthew just went and saw his dentist, and got a perfect report. No cavities, no nothing. So we were pretty happy about that.
Well, the reason is they can spot small cavities or lesions and eliminate the need for more invasive procedures, whether it's teeth or other parts of the oral cavity. I had seen my dentist a few months back because I had broken one of the teeth off of a plate that I had, and he saw some skin that was dying on the inside of my mouth, and he says, I want to make sure that isn't skin cancer. So he scraped some and took it off, and it wasn't. But if it had been, and he hadn't have checked it, and this had gotten progressively worse, I would have had esophageal cancer or cancer of the throat. And plaque control, which is the most effective way to a cavity-free mouth, they can spot, which we normally can't. I brush my teeth twice a day, and I use floss after that. If you feel a pain in your tooth, you should visit your dentist as soon as possible. You could still have your tooth fixed without a root canal if the lesion does not reach the pulp. So. And nobody wants to have a root canal. I don't know if you've ever had one, but
no, I don't know if I have or not.
They go in and drill the root out and fill it back up, and you don't feel really good. And if you get a dry socket afterwards, you're in really bad shape. Diets that contain huge amounts of sugar, excuse me, will cause cavities, but most importantly, it's the frequency of consumption that is the greater impact. So if you eat chocolate 5 times a day, your teeth will have a greater chance of becoming decayed than eating a chocolate bar or chocolate once. So children should visit the dentist as soon as they have teeth around 6 months. Don't wait until all the teeth have come out. Your dentist can help and show you how to take care of your child's teeth while he or she can't. So and if you some people put aspirin on a tooth when they get a toothache, that's going to cause an ulceration of the mucosa, the tissue around the tooth. And in case of a tooth that's coming out, don't wipe the tooth if it falls on the ground because you could damage the root. Leave that to your dentist. You have a golden period between 30 and 60 minutes. After that, the chances of successful implantation of the tooth decreases. We have ready-to-use kits that help you store the tooth. Every house should have one of these. So it's important that you take good care of these things as soon as you can, and don't risk getting a bigger infection because, in fact, you did have some symptoms. One of the last things is melatonin. We use it a lot of times to have a way to go to sleep without taking pharmaceuticals. And they just found out that the prevalence of esophageal reflux is between 18 and 28% in North America, and maybe increasing. And they find out for some reason that although PPIs are considered safe, that's those protein pump inhibitors, the patients may seek to relieve symptoms by using other things because there's been some question on whether or not PPIs that everybody should be taking than it is. But melatonin, for some reason, is secreted from the pineal gland as well as in much higher concentrations from cells in the gastrointestinal tract. And the production of melatonin is related to food intake, especially if proteins are rich in tryptophan. And tryptophan is that ingredient that helps you relax and can help you sleep. It's in milk, But it's been demonstrated in animals that the binding sites for melatonin are concentrated in the stomach and small intestine. So it's been proposed to act as a free radical scavenger, and these are things that actually work on cancer sites too, to lower gastric acid secretion and esophageal reflux through multiple mechanisms. So there's studies going on right now where we have 60 patients, which isn't a great amount, enrolled, and 27 who had GERD meet the criteria, and none of these individuals served as controls in one group, and some in the other group received 20 omeprazole, and they found out that the melatonin levels increased and the esophageal reflux decreased in people using the melatonin. So the thing that disturbs me is it wasn't a large study. It was I think there was only 9 participants, and 6 milligrams at bedtime had been shown to improve health-related quality of life in a 3-month study. It has to be much larger, but it's another thing that we need to look at of a venue on how we can treat diseases without being so toxic. We want to remind you that we're going to be getting into flu season, and in spite of everything else we talk about, there's nothing more important than getting your flu shot. On the 23rd of this month, we have our laboratory people coming in on a Friday to do the laboratory testing for your cholesterol and your liver functions and any other tests that they do. You pay for it right there on the spot. They give you the testing summary right on the spot. So be sure and check with us on that. There's a card in the pharmacy that tells you the fees that we have already at our counters, that what each of these will cost you. He's there from 9 o'clock until 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday the 23rd. But think about the flu vaccine. Think about getting the shot. We'll be more than happy to take care of you. We want to remind you that we're North Lake Medical Pharmacies with 2 locations for you. At 5136 Hill Road East across from Sutter Lakeside Hospital. Call us there at 263-6192. And outside the Bruno, Shop Smart at 347 Lakeport Boulevard. Give us a call there at 263-1328. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Bill. We'll see everybody back here again next Wednesday for Health Talk on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM, KXBX Lakeport.